to stop, to lobby them to, so they don't agree or they don't pass a ruling that will make BDS illegal and
Ah,
other, yeah, yes. So we were able to do that, and they actually stopped it. They did not vote for that because there is some influence, maybe Zionist lobby or something. They want to do that, but because maybe of our effort, we were about 130 people divided into several groups from the Northern Virginia and some from Richmond. We were able to lobby the state, our House of Representatives and Senates of Virginia. So they stopped that. Now that's one thing. The other thing that I want to mention, I was watching something about what happened with the universities, Harvard and Penn State and others, where when they're the president of these, or the, I don't know what they call, the dean or president, they were interrogated at the Congress. There was a hearing, and
Mhm.
that hearing was humiliating for these big academic people. And some of them were forced, or maybe all of them were forced to resign from their positions. The thing is, here we were able, on Virginia side, we have, most of them are maybe a few years in their position. We were able to convince them or to pressure them to stop against a decision against or ruling against BDS. But when it comes to the Congress, it looks like I saw some of these people who was interrogating the president of these universities, which is really, you cannot be a Harvard president unless you have a lot of research and history and credentials to have that position. They were actually asked or humiliated by Congress people who doesn't have any education, maybe, but they were, maybe they have money from some lobbyist. So how you deal? There is a dilemma here. There's a big issue. How you analyze that and how you deal with that? I mean, we have a Congress, but in real life, it's not really representative for us. They are representing the money. So is this country or the West going down because of they are changing from being real democracies, real representative of the people, to just representative of the influencer, the special interests?
I think we've had that going on in our country as long as the country's existed. I don't know that it's something recent. I think we're a lot more aware of it now. But I think
Yeah, it's very clear.
The money has always spoken. It's been like that here. It's been like that everywhere. There's always favorites. There's always, yeah.
I think the Arabs and Muslims have enough money, except that they're not willing to put it in the right place. While the Zionists and their supporters are actually spending money, even though they are profit-driven and they love money, but they're spending the money to support Israel, while we're spending a lot of chit-chat and talk, and nobody is actually putting the money where the mouth is. I think that's one of the problems.
So is it the money issue, or it's that democracy never existed and humanity never?
That's a good point.
Just an
Democracy exists on paper, but in practice, capitalism takes over.
So
greed is going to win out every time.
So again, it's not to argue as much as it's like there is no clear answer here, right? So the clear answer is like either we are hypocrites or not. It's like if there is democracy or not. And this takes me back to the other question from Ayman, which is more like when we're talking about the Arab regimes, it's like I do recall that President Carter, at some point in his book, talking about Palestine, he mentioned that the Arab leaders never reached out to him.
Oh yes,
about the Palestinian cause. So if you just think about this and go back as far as President Carter was a president, and see how he personally changed about like his views about the Palestinian cause, and how the Arab leaders and the Arab countries in general, to in general, because it's the Arab leaders, the main problem. It's like how they are still stable, looking for their seat and how to control their country and control the resources of that country and the hypocrisy that is going on and the lies that's going on. This is really an important thing. So we just need to like outline and be realistic and truthful with ourselves. If the Arab leaders or any of the Arab countries could done that, do they have the power? And this leads you into like, we knew from the old years that these guys are just a replacement for the colonialism. And we never free, or all of these countries are not free from colonialism to begin with. So how are they gonna reach out to free you if they are not free themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Brother Muhammad, it's back to you.
No, I mean, that's just trying just to make some points here to discuss. I don't know if Dr. Suhail is with us to maybe analyze that or add something.
The other and just another point is like to go back to like 2 weeks for Dr. Suhail's comments. I really think, and I understand, I'm not trying to bring in who's right and who's wrong. I just think like there was a couple of points that were missing from the discussion, or somehow we didn't cover, or try to, or we mentioned something but we avoid to mention something else when it comes to like the war in Gaza. And one of them was the court decision. The court decision and the issue of South Africa taking Israel or taking the genocide issue to the court. This was missing. So, and this is like a prototype. This is like the first time. So this is a game to begin with, in my opinion. It's a game to begin with, and even decision is a game. But it was missing from our conversation. And there was a lot of other things that we just avoided, and we jumped into the concepts like if this is right, if what's happening in Gaza is right and wrong. So there is multiple things that's going on in here that I think gives you plenty to talk about today.
Yeah. I mean, to add to the court decision, the court we see from the outside, but there is lots of things happening, pressure on them, on the judges from the back. I mean, we don't see when the American maybe State Department push on them or pressure them not to do this or do that, or you have this limit to reach, but don't go beyond that. I think they give them red lines, and maybe they cannot go beyond that. Because the war is still happening, and every day we hear like 200 people killed here, maybe more or less every day. They are still damaging houses, killing people. Nothing stopped yet.
May I say something about why the Arab leaders are not doing anything? It's not the Arab leaders, ya akhi. It's not the Arab leaders. It is the Arab people, the Muslim people. We have been so accustomed to tyranny that we are afraid to speak up. People like the South Africans who spent, I don't know, 50 years or more struggling for their freedom and to abolish apartheid is still fresh in their minds. So they think freely and they act freely. We blame our leaders, but our leaders are only there because we allowed them to be there. What we are trying to do in this Sunday study every week, and what my good brother Safi is trying to do with his social media, we are trying to encourage Muslims as a religious duty to be critical, to have free thinking, and this is what's missing in our culture. Most of our parents, people we know, our people are so afraid to express their opinions freely, to the point that they allow tyrants to rule the whole region, and these tyrants are not doing their job defending the nations. I think we should continue doing what we are doing, encourage people to be critical, to be free, to express themselves, not to be afraid to speak the truth. And if we reach that point, and enough people in our communities reach that point, I think we start to make change. Thank you.
Brother Muhammad, I really, and I'm sorry, I think I am allowing myself to talk, but I think it's combining both things. The leadership that we have, it's not our choice, and we never chose them. And whenever, it's like we saw what happened in the Arab Spring, when people tried to change, we know what happened. You are absolutely correct when it comes to the fear. And even us, as Palestinians living under occupation, we were under the fear that this is a barbara. This is the this is like Israel. You cannot be afraid of. You cannot just speak out, because you're gonna spend some time in jail. You're gonna be killed. You're gonna be something gonna happen to you. They're gonna assassinate you, and that's what happened, and what kept people afraid. And this is one of the gains that I really think that with what happened in October 7th, that changed, which is like the free. It's like we didn't see as many people coming out of the streets and talking, and those millions and thousands of people coming out and speaking in support of the Palestinian cause. And the same thing, we didn't see a lot of Arabs and Palestinians speaking about the cause the way that they are now. So I really think that things are changing. It depends on how we can keep up with this change and how we can use it in the right way, in the right and the right people take over this thing, instead of just talking about like, oh, blame the Arab people. It's like we need to protect them because they are in fear the way we are in fear, the way we are continue to be in fear, and we live in the most democratic country in the world.
True. If I allow me to answer that, Brother Muhammad, I was going a little deeper. I was going into our faith, the way we exercise, we understand our faith. A lot of Muslims, it's instilled in their mind now that whatever is happening is qada qadar from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why should I speak? I cannot change anything. A lot of Muslims, Salafis specifically, and Dr. Suhail keeps criticizing Salafi thinking, are about obedience. We are raised to be obedient, not to be rebels in a positive sense here. So we're not used to expressing ourselves. We're not used to say, no, this cannot happen. I will not stand and see this happen and say nothing, because Allah will ask me on the day of judgment if I keep my mouth shut. We are not raised like that. And we need to raise ourselves now, even at my age now, I'm 64, and we have to raise our children to not to be afraid to tell the truth and to act on the truth. If we read the Quran properly, it encourages that. But centuries of tyranny, and unfortunately centuries of religious leaders who worked for the tyrants, trained the Ummah, trained the nation of Islam to be obedient. We are very good obedient people. We don't take chances to speak the truth.
Right, there is
Assalamu
actually
alaikum. Can I say something? Assalamu alaikum. I think the Arab Spring has shown that the Arab streets, try to make a change. But the cost of doing that, so it was not just Salafi, it was everybody was hitting the streets. In Egypt, in Tunisia, in Algeria, a decade before that, in Yemen, in Syria, everywhere. So the Arabs hit the streets. They tried to make a change. They were not afraid. But the cost was so high. If you count the totality, millions were killed. And millions more were basically pushed out of their countries, like in Syria. And then the deep states came back. So people did come out. And I remember when people were talking about it, it was just the street. It was not Salafi or Ikhwan or Faith. It was just people had enough. So I
I
think we
think
should
what he
really
meant,
look at it that way, that the cost was so high and people went back. I remember in Algeria, after killing 250,000, people wanted to just move on and live in peace.
Hmm.
That's all. So I
it's
think
deep in the
it's
culture,
deeper
brother.
than trying to put it in some religious terms. I think people had enough of oppression, of dictatorship, of, not living in dignity. And it's just a general response. Wallahu a'lam. Allah knows best.
I think when Dr. Sahel meant Salafi is not the group Salafi, it's the thinking. There is
Yes, yes.
there is example that I seen this in the books and in the hadith books, or say أن لا ننازع الأمر أهله. You don't interfere with the ruling issues. This is not your stuff. There is people who are specialized in the government, and you are stay away from that. So you are discouraged from asking. While there is other hadith which is really good, which is the application of Sahaba, application of Sayyidina Muhammad in the beginning, an application of Sahaba, which is you ask, you question, and you cannot just. And also Sayyid al-Shuhada Hamza ورجل قام إلى إمام جائر فنصحه فقتله. The best Sayyid
But I'm
al-Shuhada, the
saying,
best of
brother,
the martyrs. Yeah.
I grew up in Algeria. I lived in Saudi. I visited most of the Arab countries. You cannot tag that to all the people. Maybe in Saudi, for example, they will use these hadiths. People don't know them in Algeria.
Well, Algeria
Okay,
has
and they
how
don't
many
follow
millions
it in
murder,
Tunisia.
of course.
So you
Yeah.
can just, and in Syria is a whole different story. Okay, same thing, the people in Gaza. So I think you can't, it's, I think we sometimes mistake this Salafi thought in one specific country, that they are using it to maintain governance or to maintain their seats, and cannot try to extend it to the whole Muslim world. And that's not true. That's all. It might be a theory, but it's not real. I'm sorry, sister. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I thought you concluded. I'm sorry. If I may say, back to your, whoever was making the observation about the Muslims just doing what they're told. This is the way we've done it. This is the way we're taught to believe or to act or to accept certain things. And as I'm going to call myself an outsider because I'm a convert, but someone who came to Islam from the outside and who is culturally not Muslim nor Arabic of any kind, I can see that. It was something I come from a culture of California in the 1970s where we speak up a little too much sometimes. Also, I was taught by my friends who taught me about Islam from the beginning to, just because some sheikh or imam or all the savants have said this for 1400 years, if I don't think if I've got a doubt, look it up. If I'm not sure about something, don't do it because we've always done that. Find out why we do it. Ikra at its broadest sense. Read, learn, understand, speak up when it's, something could be wrong after all these years. And so I don't pretend to know anything, but I have no hesitation in speaking up and asking questions. And I kind of stir up the waters in my mosque a little too much because I have lots of questions to which people, oddly enough, don't have answers. And it's a shame. I hope maybe in future, this next generation of young people, even if they're born Muslims, will be more like that, because there is so much just open talking, people having so much more information at their fingertips. But the other part of what I wanted to say was, when you speak, I don't know Arab countries well, but my friends are from Blida, who taught me Islam, and I have other friends from Iran. And while both families, all their families are very observant Muslims, they have a totally different outlook on things. And the family from Iran, and I'm not speaking to the city, I'm just saying the one family, they're very, it's only this way. The women must be covered, or they can't, they're not allowed to speak up. They don't know the reasons for anything, and it's almost like the Catholics used to be, or they are here in France. It's ritual, ritual, ritual. Whereas people that I know from other cities, Algiers or my friends in Blida, have, and so I would call them Salafi in the mentality, in the hardline conservative way, whereas people from other communities generally have a more, it's not like they're liberal in their belief, they still have the same beliefs, but their practice is more like you guys.
You guys.
They are, and they educate themselves, and they ask questions, and they read for themselves, and they don't just take things at face. Some things they take at face value, but not everything. So I think what you're saying, as an outsider, how I see the Ummah is it can be regional, but I think it comes down to families and your local community, close community. And hopefully the next generation can break out of that. Inshallah. I've spoken long, sorry.
Oh, well said, sister. It really, it changes from, like you said, family to family, area to area, community to
True,
community.
true, very true.
Yeah, you cannot use a brush.
True.
I believe that the issue is, I think has deep roots that we really need to study. First of all, I'm surprised that anyone is expecting anything to happen from Arab governments or regimes, or even from the international institutions. Anytime you talk about Arab politics, or you need to remember that number one, these are not independent countries. Number two, you are ruled by people who are there to maintain their power, and then they are supported from outside, which means that there was no way they will take stand on this international court, or they will file or support it, because that's costly, and they don't have the green light for that to do. And as Brother Muhammad mentioned, without strong pressure from the people, they're not going to do it. And even if there was really very solid pressure from the people, they would have done it like symbolically, just after getting some permission to do it, just to, to try to control their people. But they're not, none of them is really serious about supporting the Palestinian, or supporting or paying the price for it. Like the South Africa said that they know there will be a price for this. It's not cheap to take that stand. So I don't think we should have expected anything from any Arab regime. And also these international institutions, United Nations, International Court, under pressure, they may issue something that is nice. You may like it, but it's not going to make any difference on the ground. And we have seen it did not make any difference. So, but when it comes to this, our situation, we really have to study our history, because it has deep roots. For hundreds of years, for centuries, we have been swinging between dictatorship and chaos. Since the Civil War, and when you read about the Civil War that happened after the Khilafah Rashida, after the first system of governance before the transition to dynasty, you will find the roots of many of the problems that we are living today. Number one, unable to manage our differences. Number two, struggle for power at any cost. Number three, the result of that, because I don't know if you know, or if you remember or not, the two battles that took place within less than a year, it was 8 months apart, claimed the lives of more than 80,000 people. The first battle, Jamal, first battle, 7 days, 70,000, and the second battle, 1 day, 10,000 people. So from that, when people saw that tragedy, they start longing for stability at any cost. It doesn't matter, dictatorship, not dictatorship. Anybody who brings law and order is legitimate. And then the fuqaha, they went to make this legitimate. So there is a whole fiqh behind this, that whoever brings law and order is a legitimate ruler. It doesn't matter how they come to power or how they rule. That's become details. For hundreds of years, and we're living like this. So whoever comes, brings stability, law, and order, we obey them. And when we are fed up, when we cannot take it anymore, when there is some signs of weaknesses, then we rebel. We rebel, we enter into bloody transition, mostly inner fighting between people, until somebody else comes or another family, and then establish law and order, and we obey them. We have been like this for hundreds of years, suffering from the result of, number one, inability to handle our differences. And we have seen it recently. The Mujahideen in Afghanistan, united, supported by Muslims all over the world. The day they entered Kabul, they start fighting with each other. So the day they achieved victory, they start fighting each other. So I just want to be realistic that these problems have deep roots. And number one, you are living in countries that are not independent, were not liberated. The land was liberated, but the decision, it still was not liberated. They don't own their own decisions. And number two, this power struggle at any cost, it's still there. You have seen it. People in Libya, they were able to topple a regime, and they ended up in the situation that you see. People in Yemen, they were able to topple a regime, and you ended up in the situation that you see. So, and even in Tunisia, it didn't become bloody, but it is mess. It's a total mess. So we have to understand that if we're going to continue adapting to a situation just because there is some stability, and then rebelling or revolting when we are fed up and we cannot take it anymore, without any vision for change, we just go out because we fed up with that regime. And then the new scenario is designed for us, and it is implemented. So we ended up, we only throw down the existing regimes, which is only facade for something else. And then some new facade is put there, and we go home happy because we achieved the goal. That's what happened in Egypt, happened in Tunisia, and after the Arab Spring, people thought they achieved their goals. They celebrated victory, just to find out that they are basically face to face with a reality that is not very different from the previous one. And that's why nowadays nobody in the Arab world especially is willing to go to the street. Why? Because they have seen that you may pay the price for change, but you get nothing out of it. Why this is the case? Because you are a country that is not independent, and you have a political elite who is willing, or who's ready to, who's obsessed with power at any cost and by any means. So you topple the existing regime, they will bring scenario from what, quote unquote, the opposition that is not very different from the existing regime, because the difference between those political parties is not the difference of programs, is not about people, is not about democracy, is not about principle, it's about power. The problem that the opposition has with the regime is that they want to be in their place, in his place, not to change anything. So it's a long way to go unless we resume our liberation movement, unless we have really a national vision or project that will rally people, that we want to comprehensive change from the roots. We want to become free countries where justice prevail. We want to become advanced countries where we have real economy, where we have real education and real everything, not stay in this situation. Unless a dream like this or a vision like this is developed and people buy it or are convinced with it and they're ready to pay the price for change, we're going to continue. Unless also the religious grounds of this stability at any cost, it doesn't matter, because the majority of Muslims nowadays, unfortunately, they don't have a problem with dictatorship. As long it brings stability and reasonable life, they don't have a problem with it. And some Muslims, they don't have a problem with dictatorship if they apply some Sharia, some hudud. They're fine with it. So we don't have an issue like by principles rejecting this life under dictatorship. That Allah created us free. We should be free. Nobody should, impose themselves on us. We should be led by consent, and we should never accept this oppression and corruption as if it is a destiny, as if it is qadar, yani, even though it is a man-made. Yani. So this is some thoughts that I want to share.
So just following up, I don't want to be too long, but there is several projects, like you mentioned, the national project. You can rally people around. Like, do we have that like in Malaysia or Turkey or even South Africa after the apartheid system has been removed?
It happened. That's exactly what happened in Malaysia. That's exactly what happened in Turkey. It happened in other places. It happened in Singapore. It happened in South Korea, where people believed that the situation should not continue, and we can do a lot better than this. They were lucky to have a leadership in place to lead this. Unfortunately, that's not the case in most Arab countries, at least. That's why our only hope is grassroots. Because if you're going to wait for a political leader or political party to initiate this movement and to start something that like what happened in those countries, it's not going to happen. Because we have seen a lot of political leaders who start honest, but then they were able to, recruited, quote unquote, by the same forces, external forces and the lobbyists, because the real power in most Arab countries is in the hands of foreign powers and in the hands of the few families who own the economy. And then the armed forces. The armed forces are the ones who will protect whoever is in power. But it is this triangle that cannot be shaken except by the will of people. When people refuse or reject situation, then they have no choice. But as long as people are accepting it, foreign powers are taking advantage of the situation. Lobbyists, the few people who have monopoly over the economy, in most countries there are like a handful of families who divide the whole economy among them. Things are going to continue, unfortunately. So we have a lot of time, a good politician or party that start honest and serious about change, and then they are somehow recruited because they are obsessed with powers, and they find out that the shortest way to power is by striking a deal with the foreign forces and domestic or lobbyists. When you strike a deal with them, they will bring you to power, but they bring you to be a puppet, not to do anything. And that's unfortunately happened times and again.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I hope that I'm next. I see only my hand raised, so I'm just gonna go in. So I do agree 100% with whatever you just mentioned. The only thing that is left, and it's part of this conversation for the last couple of weeks or so, is what's the cost and how you calculate the cost and how you realize, like, for the change. What's the cost for this change? And it takes me like back to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the beginning of the Islam and the isolation of the Muslims in Sha'b Bani Hashim, or the valley of Bani Hashim, and what followed that and how long they stayed in there. They are isolated. It was very similar, a mini genocide of what's happening today, because they were isolated from food, disconnected from the people, and then it led the Muslims to flee the country or flee Mecca and moved on into Medina, and then they came back. So it's like, is the cost to lose everything and go prepare and come back? Or there is somehow a way to calculate that cost to implement that change?
I mean, it's there is no easy answer for this. Change should not be like at any cost, and we should not accept stability at any price. It's always, as Muslims, we need to balance benefits and cost, if you will. So peaceful change is always ideal. It's always better, especially that you're not fighting foreign powers. It's not like occupation. It's not like Palestine. You're talking about it's internal, and any internal fighting will only make the situation worse. And we have seen it. We have seen it in every country. Peaceful resistance is always preferred. Minimizing the cost is, but at the bottom line is not to accept this situation and to adapt to it, to keep the change as the goal and to keep pushing for it and be patient. It may take time, because what happened over centuries is not going to be fixed in weeks. I mean, people were dreaming if they thought that demonstrating for 3 or 4 weeks in the Arab Spring, it will change the situation that happened over centuries. No, it is not, because mindset need to be changed, culture need to be changed, religion. There is a lot of religious misconceptions that have to be revisited. It's a whole revolution that is needed to move forward, because, you know, things are very interrelated. That's why when countries collapse, they collapse comprehensively. And also when they advance comprehensively, because things feed into one another. Improvement in education will result in economy, will improve so every improvement anywhere will feed into the rest of the sectors and the rest of the, there is no easy question for this, except that to say, be the change that you want to see in your country or in your world. It starts with you as an individual, embodying that change, rejecting injustice, never pay any bribe to get your right, never accept to be denied your rights. You live in a Muslim country or in Arab country as if you are in an advanced nations, demanding and holding to all your rights, fulfilling all your duties, and then educating the people and raising the awareness of the people around you. It is a long way, but there is no alternative to it. It is the grassroots. It's like the prophetic model. It's a one individual who will embody the change and then try to spread it, to rally, form a core group, and then expand. And that's, we have seen it. That's how Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did it. And that's, unfortunately, especially in Arab countries, that's the only way. Because if we're gonna wait for a leader or a political party to emerge and to lead this movement of change, is not gonna happen. They will be not either suppressed, or they will be because you are occupied, even though it is not obvious, but you are occupied. Or there will be also, there can be, I can't find the right word, or to be basically bribed or recruited because of that obsession with power. So yeah.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Do I need to raise my hand, or it's okay?
Please go ahead.
Okay. Sheikh, so the Arab Spring, was there a kind of an analysis of what happened, what could have been done better? Because when I look backward at it, Tunisia seems to have had the best, let's say, all of them did not succeed, but the best kind of example. It did not fall apart as a country. They did not fight each other. I think somehow somebody took an opportunity and came back. But unlike Libya or Algeria, the way they went about it. Hello?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Sorry,
the way,
brother, go ahead.
okay. So the way they went about it, at least if we had to compare, will have been maybe the best example, closer to what you say, trying to make a change peacefully. And even there was a lot of discussion, trying to revisit the constitutions, they were worked like very different parties, like communists, Islamists, just they kind of work together. But at the end, it failed. So are there any lessons learned? So at least the Arab nations can go forward. They said, look, this is what happened here in the Arab Spring, and some study that will come out how we're going to go forward next, if we have to, something to use as a lesson learned that kind of get passed on down generations.
That's a great question. I think if there are, I mean, of course, this requires elaborate evaluation and assessment of what went right and what went wrong. But quickly, I think the main lessons that we need to learn from the Arab Spring, that there is nothing is going to happen quickly, that the change that is required, we need to forget about that it can happen in weeks or it can happen. So that's one thing. And the second, we need to forget about the top-down change, that the change in those countries is not going to happen from above, because you can change the regime and nothing is going to change because the foundations are shaky and very weak. And that's why the importance of grassroots and long-term work. Grassroots and long-term work, and take advantage of the margin that is there. In almost every Arab country, there is some margin of movement or working. It's not completely suppressed. Very few probably, if any, but everywhere there is a margin for people to do something, but not to do something quickly. But that's why I think the main lessons is that change is going to take time, and it have to be grassroots, and we need to forget about if we change the regime and bring some good people, they're going to change the situation. It's not going to happen, because you're living in countries that are not independent. They are subordinate, and then that may be the case if your country was really independent. So these are the main lessons that we need to learn. And the other lessons is never seek help from outside to solve the internal issue or national issues, because those who are going to come from outside, they have their own agenda. They're not going to come to help you. And we have seen what happened in Libya and in other places. Syria nowadays, it's basically a war by proxy. Russia, Iran, United States, everybody is playing there. And then Libya, the same thing. When NATO was invited, they went to destroy almost the whole infrastructure unnecessarily, because they could have taken Gaddafi in no time, in a couple hours, without that much destruction. And then you see the results. So these are probably some of the important lessons that we learned. internal issues need to be solved internally, peacefully as much as possible, as long there is no foreign occupation, and grassroots and long term.
I was disconnected for a minute. Are we done for today?
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Well, just I want to comment a very short comment. The brother, I think you are from Algeria, is there? And I believe Malik ibn Nabi had a very interesting principle, which is he said, it's not we are occupied, it's why we are occupied.
That's
Why?
true.
Yes.
Allah
So
yarhamu, yeah.
Allah yarham. I'll just end with that.
قابلية للاستعمار.
قابلة للاستماع.
There is somebody who's raising his hand. Maybe you should allow him to.
That was me, I guess.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, time is over, but Jazakumullah khair. It was interesting discussion. And I think that's a great thing. We need everybody to participate. And if you can prepare some stuff, that would be even better. Jazakumullah khair.
One last thing, Muhammad.
Go ahead.
Anyone there? Yeah,
Go ahead.
there's can you talk about the conversation today, this evening with Dr. Safi, the interfaith conversation? And I sent you a message asking if there was going to be a Zoom link.
I don't think there is Zoom link. There is no Zoom link. Usually it's just in person. I think we should work on that. But yes, there is at the kitchen, at Sam's Kitchen, the Dish Kitchen, we have discussion today at evening, I think at 6 o'clock or something. I'm not sure about the time. But it's in person. It's almost monthly. We will meet there and we have speakers. Every time it's usually different speaker, but we usually Dr. Safi or Dr. Suhail is there. But this time we have Dr. Safi and we have our friend Dr. Yu, and we have Imam Johari. They were talking about, I think the discussion will be about religion and its role in peace and around that subject. But to have it on Zoom, I think I will ask if they can do it. But for today, I don't think it's available on Zoom.
Okay, Jazakumullah khair.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.